The Mediterranean looked calm that night. Too calm. From the bridge of the guided missile destroyer, Admiral Catherine Kate Harrington leaned against the rail and watched the black water stretch into the darkness. The moon was hidden behind clouds, leaving the sea almost invisible except for the faint white glow of the ship's wake. Sailors in the fleet called her the Lady Admiral. Not because she wanted the title. It had grown naturally over the years, through long deployments, tough decisions, and more than one night when her leadership kept American sailors alive. Tonight felt like one of those nights. Behind her, the massive carrier USS Abraham Lincoln cut through the Mediterranean like a floating city. Nearly 5,000 sailors lived and worked aboard the carrier, along with squadrons of strike fighters and surveillance aircraft. Protecting that carrier was Kate's job, and she took that responsibility personally. "Admiral," a voice said from inside the bridge. It was Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, the ship's operations officer. He stepped forward holding a tablet, his expression serious. "You're gonna want to see this." Kate followed him inside the dim red-lit bridge. The soft hum of electronics filled the room. Radar screens glowed across the combat information center below. "What view we got?" she asked. Jake zoomed in on a sonar report. Sonabui picked something up about 40 miles southeast of the fleet. Kate folded her arms. "Something." "Submarine signature." The room went quiet. In modern naval warfare, nothing made sailors more nervous than an unseen submarine. A destroyer could defend against missiles. Fighters could intercept aircraft. But submarines hunted from the darkness. Invisible. Patient. Deadly. "What kind?" Kate asked. Jake shook his head. "Still analyzing. But the acoustic pattern doesn't match anything friendly." Kate studied the data. The contact had appeared briefly on passive sonar, then disappeared again. Classic submarine behavior. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Jake asked. Kate nodded slowly. "Someone's stalking the fleet." Below them, the carrier group continued moving steadily through the Mediterranean. Besides USS Abraham Lincoln, the strike group included 2 destroyers, a cruiser and several support ships. Together they formed one of the most powerful naval formations on Earth. But even a carrier strike group had weaknesses. Submarines. Kate walked toward the tactical display. "Helm," she said calmly. "Yes, Admiral." "Bring us 5 degrees starboard. Quiet mode." "Aye, Ma'am." The destroyer slowly changed course. In the combat information center below, sonar operators leaned closer to their screens. Searching. Listening. Every sound in the ocean told a story. Propellers, whales, distant shipping traffic, even underwater earthquakes. Somewhere in that dark water, something else was listening too. Kate looked at Jake. "When did the contact appear?" "About 10 minutes ago." "And then it vanished." "Yes, ma'am." Kate exhaled slowly. That meant the submarine captain knew exactly what he was doing. A skilled hunter. "Deploy the MH-60 helicopter," she ordered. Jake raised an eyebrow. "At night?" Kate nodded. "If someone's stalking my carrier, I want eyes in the water." Minutes later, the flight deck erupted into motion. Crew members in colored jerseys guided the helicopter into position. Rotors began spinning. The aircraft lifted off into the dark sky, carrying sonar buoys designed to listen for submarines beneath the waves. On the bridge, Kate watched the helicopter's icon move across the tactical display. "Let's see what you're hiding down there," she murmured. Jake crossed his arms. "You think it's enemy?" Kate didn't hesitate. "Yes." "Any idea whose?" Kate shook her head. But deep down she had a suspicion. The Mediterranean had become crowded in recent years with rival naval forces. Russian submarines, Iranian proxies, and other hostile actors frequently tested American patrols. And sometimes they got too close. If this submarine carried torpedoes, and most did, it could threaten the entire carrier group. Kate wouldn't let that happen. Not on her watch. Suddenly, the radio crackled. "Seahawk 1 to Admiral Harrington." Kate grabbed the handset. "Go ahead, Seahawk." "Admiral, we just got something." Jake looked up. "What kind of something?" The helicopter pilot's voice came back tense. "Strong sonar return. Definitely a submarine." Kate's eyes narrowed. "Range. 23 miles from the fleet. Jake whistled under his breath. That's close. Kate stared at the screen. Too close. A submarine within 20 miles of a carrier strike group could launch torpedoes within minutes. Can you classify it? She asked. There was a pause. Then the pilot spoke again. Admiral, acoustic profile suggests a diesel-electric attack submarine. Jake leaned closer. Diesel subs are quiet as hell, he muttered. Kate nodded. They were among the hardest submarines to track. Battery-powered. Nearly silent. Perfect for ambushes. Maintain tracking, Kate ordered. But keep your distance. Copy that. She placed the radio down. Jake looked at her. So what's the play? Kate studied the tactical map. The submarine icon moved slowly, heading directly toward the carrier group. No doubt about it now. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone was hunting them. Kate straightened. General quarters. The alarm echoed through the destroyer. Battle stations. Battle stations. Sailors rushed to their posts. Down in the sonar room, technicians listened carefully through headphones, trying to follow the faint underwater signature. Jake glanced at the screen again. Admiral, submarine just changed course. Kate frowned. Toward us. Jake nodded. Looks like it's lining up for an intercept. Kate felt the tension building across the ship. The enemy submarine had chosen its target. The carrier. And if it got within firing range, even a single torpedo could cripple the fleet. Kate turned to Jake. Not tonight. He smiled slightly. No, ma'am. Kate tapped the screen. Prepare anti-submarine torpedoes. Launch additional sonar buoys from the helicopter. Already on it. Kate looked out the window again at the dark sea. Somewhere below those waves, a submarine commander was calculating distance, speed, and firing angles, waiting for the perfect moment. But he had made one mistake. He had come too close to her fleet. Kate picked up the radio again. Seahawk 1, this is Admiral Harrington. Go ahead. Keep that submarine lit up. I want to know every move it makes. Yes, ma'am. The helicopter pilot paused before adding one more sentence. Admiral, if that sub fires a torpedo, we'll have maybe 60 seconds to react. Kate nodded quietly. Then let's make sure he never gets the chance. The midnight sea remained dark and silent. But beneath the waves, the hunt had begun. And before sunrise, one of those hunters would lose. General quarters. General quarters. All hands man your battle stations. Red lights glowed across the bridge as sailors rushed to their consoles. Down in the Combat Information Center, the atmosphere felt tight and focused, the kind of tension that came only when something dangerous was moving beneath the sea. Admiral Catherine Kate Harrington stood at the main tactical screen. On the display, a blinking contact symbol marked the submarine's last known position. 22 miles. Heading northwest. Heading straight for the carrier group. Behind the destroyer, the massive silhouette of USS Abraham Lincoln continued moving through the dark water, its deck lights faintly glowing in the distance. That ship carried thousands of American sailors and pilots. Protecting them was Kate's mission tonight, and the enemy submarine clearly knew it. Sonar report, Kate said calmly. A voice came from the console below. Admiral, contact is still moving slow. Very quiet signature. Diesel electric for sure. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison folded his arms. Guy down there knows his business. Kate nodded slightly. Diesel submarines were built for stealth. Running on battery power, they could move almost silently through the water. Perfect for ambush attacks. Speed, she asked. 5 knots. Kate studied the screen. 5 knots meant the submarine wasn't rushing. It was stalking. Just like a predator closing in on its prey. The radio crackled again. Seahawk 1 to Admiral Harrington. Kate grabbed the handset. Go ahead. The helicopter pilot sounded tense. Admiral, we dropped 4 sonar buoys around the contact. We're tracking him clearly now. Good work. There was a brief pause. Then the pilot added something that made the room go silent. Admiral's submarine just increased speed. Jake looked up immediately. How fast? 10 knots, maybe 12. Kate's eyes narrowed. That meant the submarine captain had made his decision. He wasn't just observing anymore. He was preparing to attack. Jake leaned toward the tactical map. If he pushes to 20 knots, he'll be within torpedo range in less than 15 minutes. Kate exhaled slowly. Helm. Yes, Admiral. Bring the destroyer forward of the carrier. Intercept course. Aye, ma'am. The destroyer surged ahead, engines pushing harder against the water. Kate had just moved her ship directly between the submarine and the carrier. If the enemy fired torpedoes, they would have to pass through her defense zone first. Jake noticed the maneuver. You're putting us in the line of fire. Kate gave a small smile. That's what destroyers are for. Down in the sonar room, the operators listened carefully. The faint spinning sound of a submarine propeller echoed through their headsets. Every few seconds the signal grew stronger. The submarine was getting closer. 20 miles. 18. 16. The distance closed slowly but steadily. Suddenly one of the sonar technicians sat upright. Contact changed course. Jake looked down. What direction? Heading directly toward the carrier now. Kate tapped the display. He's lining up for a firing solution. The enemy commander below the surface was calculating angles, speed, and distance, waiting for the perfect moment to launch. Jake shook his head. That guy's bold. Kate replied quietly. Or desperate. Another voice broke through the speakers. Sonar to Admiral, submarine just slowed down. Kate frowned. Why slow down? Then the answer hit her instantly. Because he's preparing to fire. The room froze. Jake looked at the screen again. Distance 12 miles. A modern submarine torpedo could easily reach that far. Kate grabbed the radio. Seahawk 1, stay clear of the submarine's bow. Copy that. She turned to the weapons officer. Prepare anti-submarine torpedoes. Torpedoes ready. Jake leaned closer to the screen. Admiral. Kate already saw it. A new contact appeared on the sonar display. Fast. Very fast. Sonar report, she demanded. The technician shouted the words every sailor feared. Torpedo in the water. The room exploded into activity. Jake pointed at the screen. It's heading straight for the carrier. Kate didn't hesitate. Deploy countermeasures. On the destroyer's deck, launchers fired underwater decoys designed to confuse incoming torpedoes. But the enemy weapon kept coming. Speed 40 knots. Distance closing fast. Jake looked at Kate. Time to impact? 2 minutes, maybe less. If that torpedo struck USS Abraham Lincoln, the damage could be catastrophic. Kate leaned over the tactical table. Helm increase speed. Full power. Aye. The destroyer surged forward again. Jake suddenly understood her plan. You're going to intercept it. Kate nodded. Destroyers carried specialized systems designed to stop submarine torpedoes before they reached larger ships. But the window to act was small. Very small. Fire anti-torpedo weapon, she ordered. A moment later, a defensive torpedo shot from the destroyer into the dark water. The weapon raced toward the incoming enemy torpedo. The entire bridge waited. Seconds passed. Then, a dull explosion echoed beneath the sea. Jake exhaled. Direct hit. Kate nodded once. One down. But the victory lasted only a moment. Another sonar operator shouted. Second torpedo detected. Jake's eyes widened. That sub fired a spread. The new torpedo was approaching from a slightly different angle. Even faster. Kate didn't panic. Deploy additional decoys. Aye. The ocean behind the destroyer filled with noisemakers and bubble generators designed to attract the torpedo away from the fleet. For a moment the weapon seemed confused. Then it changed course again. Still hunting. Jake looked at the display. 30 seconds. Kate turned to the weapons officer. Launch second interceptor. Another defensive torpedo shot into the water. The seconds ticked by slowly. The two weapons closed the distance rapidly. Then, a violent underwater blast shook the ocean. The second torpedo vanished from the screen. Jake let out a long breath. Both neutralized. Kate finally relaxed slightly. But the battle wasn't over. Not even close. She pointed at the submarine's icon. Now it's our turn. Jake smiled. About time. Kate picked up the radio. Seahawk 1, mark the submarine's position. Already tracking. Kate turned to the weapons officer again. Prepare Mark 54 torpedo. The officer nodded. Ready to fire. Kate gave the order. Launch. The destroyer fired its anti-submarine torpedo into the dark Mediterranean waters. Somewhere deep below the surface, the enemy submarine commander would soon realize something terrifying. The hunter had just become the hunted. And the midnight battle was far from over. Torpedoes in the water. The destroyer cut through the dark Mediterranean like a blade. Inside the Combat Information Center, the tension was thick enough to feel in the air. Screens glowed with sonar patterns, tracking symbols, and constantly updating tactical data. Admiral Catherine Kate Harrington stood silently in front of the main display. Moments earlier, her destroyer had launched a Mark 54 anti-submarine torpedo into the water. Now the weapon was racing through the darkness beneath the waves. Its target, the hostile submarine stalking the fleet. Behind the destroyer, the massive carrier USS Abraham Lincoln continued moving slowly with the rest of the strike group, surrounded by escort ships forming a protective shield. But the danger wasn't over. Not yet. Sonar, track our torpedo, Kate ordered. The sonar chief responded immediately. Torpedo active, running hot, straight, and normal. Jake Morrison stepped closer to the display. On the screen, two moving symbols were closing toward each other. One was the American torpedo. The other was the enemy submarine. Distance between them 2,000 yards. Jake exhaled slowly. Let's see how that submarine captain likes being hunted. Kate didn't smile. Experienced submarine commanders were clever. The moment they detected an incoming torpedo, they usually had several tricks to survive. And Kate knew the enemy captain below the sea wasn't an amateur. Suddenly the sonar technician spoke again. Contact maneuvering. Jake leaned forward. What kind of maneuver? Submarine diving deeper. Increasing speed. Kate nodded. Evasive action. The submarine had detected the torpedo. Now the underwater chase had begun. Deep below the surface, the hostile submarine twisted sharply through the water, trying to outrun the American weapon. Diesel submarines could be incredibly quiet, but they weren't the fastest vessels in the ocean. And once a torpedo locked onto them, escaping was difficult. Jake looked at the display again. Range closing fast. Kate crossed her arms. Keep tracking. The destroyer maintained its position ahead of the carrier group, acting as a shield against further submarine attacks. Outside, the sea was still black and silent. But beneath the surface, machines of war were racing through the darkness. Admiral, the sonar chief said. Yes. We just detected something. Kate looked up. What is it? Countermeasures. Jake frowned. The submarine had released decoys, small devices designed to imitate the noise of a submarine engine. To a torpedo sensors, those decoys could look like real targets. On the screen, several new sonar signatures appeared. The torpedo slowed slightly as it processed the signals. Jake sighed. That guy's buying time. Kate watched the screen carefully. Modern torpedoes were designed to analyze sound patterns and reject fake targets, but it still took time. And time meant opportunity for the submarine. Submarine changing direction again. The sonar operator announced. The contact turned sharply to the south. Jake shook his head. He's running. Kate nodded. Smart move. But the American torpedo finally made its decision. The weapon ignored the decoys. Instead, it locked onto the strongest sound signature. The real submarine. Torpedo reacquired target, sonar reported. Jake smiled slightly. Looks like he picked the right one. Distance between them, 800 yards. Then 600. Then 400. The submarine suddenly performed another violent maneuver. Contact diving deeper, the sonar chief shouted. Kate frowned. How deep? 400 meters, still descending. Jake whistled quietly. That sub is pushing its limits. Many diesel-electric submarines operated safely at depths of around 300 meters. Going deeper increased the risk of hull damage. The enemy captain was desperate. Kate spoke calmly. Our torpedo? Still tracking. Distance, 200 yards. The entire room waited. Seconds passed. Then, a powerful explosion thundered beneath the ocean. The shockwave rolled through the water like distant thunder. Jake leaned over the console. Direct hit. The sonar operator listened carefully. For several seconds there was only static. Then he shook his head slowly. Negative. Jake frowned. What do you mean negative? The torpedo detonated, but the submarine is still moving. Kate's eyes narrowed. The enemy submarine had survived, probably by diving just deep enough to escape the torpedo's blast radius. Jake rubbed his forehead. That captain's good. Kate nodded. But now something had changed. The submarine had been forced to maneuver hard and increase speed. That meant more noise. And noise made submarines easier to track. Sonar, keep him locked, she ordered. Aye. Another update appeared on the screen. The submarine had slowed again, probably trying to disappear into the silent depths. But now the American fleet knew exactly where it was. Jake looked at Kate. So what's next? Kate studied the tactical map. The submarine was now 15 miles from the carrier group. Still dangerous, still armed, but no longer hidden. Helicopter still tracking? She asked. The radio operator nodded. Yes, Admiral. Kate picked up the microphone. Seahawk 1, this is Admiral Harrington. Go ahead. Drop another sonar buoy grid around the contact. Copy that. Jake realized her strategy. You're boxing him in. Kate nodded. A submarine trapped inside a ring of sonar buoys had fewer escape routes, and that meant the next torpedo strike would be far more accurate. Minutes passed as the helicopter deployed additional buoys across the dark ocean. Soon the tactical display showed a wide circle of listening sensors surrounding the submarine. The trap was closing. Suddenly the sonar operator spoke again. Submarine accelerating. Jake looked up. Toward the carrier again. Negative. Then where? The technician pointed at the display. Toward us. The enemy submarine had changed targets. Instead of attacking the carrier, it was now heading directly toward the destroyer. Jake frowned. That's unexpected. Kate understood immediately. He knows we're the one hunting him. If the submarine could damage or sink the destroyer, the carrier group would lose its primary anti-submarine defense. It was a risky move, but sometimes desperate commanders took desperate actions. Jake looked at the distance marker. 10 miles and closing. Kate nodded calmly. He's not escaping. She turned to the weapons officer. Prepare second torpedo. Torpedo ready. Jake watched the submarine icon creeping closer. You think he's planning another attack? Kate answered without hesitation. Yes. The submarine had already fired once tonight, and a commander bold enough to launch torpedoes at a carrier group wouldn't quit easily. Kate gave the next order. Fire. The second American torpedo plunged into the Mediterranean waters, racing toward the enemy submarine. But this time the submarine was heading straight toward them. Hunter and prey were moving directly into each other. Jake looked at the screen again. Admiral. Kate glanced at him. What? Jake pointed to a new sonar signal. Another fast contact had appeared. Speed 40 knots. Direction. Straight toward the destroyer. Jake's voice dropped. Another torpedo in the water. Kate's eyes hardened. The submarine had fired again, and this one was coming straight for them. The destroyer shook as another torpedo sliced through the Mediterranean waters toward them. Red lights blinked and sirens wailed across the bridge. Admiral Catherine Kate Harrington stood steady, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Every sailor on the bridge moved with precision, like a well-rehearsed machine, but even seasoned crews felt the tension tonight. Range? Kate asked, her voice calm but firm. 4,000 yards, the sonar chief replied. It's closing fast. Jake Morrison leaned over the display. If that torpedo hits, we're done for. Kate shook her head. Not on my watch. She turned to the weapons officer. Deploy all remaining countermeasures. Every decoy, every bubble generator now. The deck crew worked quickly, launching an array of underwater devices designed to mislead the incoming torpedo. Jets of air hissed, small metallic decoys spun, and noisemakers popped to life beneath the water. On the tactical screen, the torpedo wavered slightly. Sensors were confused, but only for a moment. Admiral, it's reacquiring the target, the sonar chief warned. Kate's jaw tightened. She had seconds to act. Fire the second Mark 54, she ordered. The destroyer's torpedo tube roared, releasing a sleek, deadly weapon into the black Mediterranean. The sonar displays showed the torpedo racing straight toward the hostile submarine. The enemy sub, realizing it could no longer escape, made a desperate maneuver, diving deeper, turning sharply and accelerating. But the combination of American decoys and the precision torpedo was overwhelming. Jake's hand hovered over the console. It's now or never. Kate didn't hesitate. Launch the third. Full speed, fire and forget. Make it count. The third Mark 54 tore through the water, guided by sonar to the submarine's hull. Seconds later, a distant but powerful underwater explosion shook the destroyer. The sonar operator's eyes widened. Direct hit. Submarine is listing. Systems failed. The room erupted in controlled cheers. Sailors exhaled and tightened their grips, still alert but relieved. Kate didn't allow herself a smile. Keep tracking. Make sure it's neutralized. Minutes passed. The submarine's signature weakened. It tried to move, but its battery power was drained. Its hull had sustained critical damage. Slowly, it sank into the dark depths of the Mediterranean, vanishing beneath the waves. Jake exhaled, leaning back. She's gone. Kate nodded slowly. Gone, but the threat is gone. That's what matters. She turned to the tactical display, eyes scanning the horizon. Behind her, the USS Abraham Lincoln continued its steady course. The carrier, with thousands of sailors and pilots aboard, was safe. The bridge was quiet for a moment. Then Kate spoke. "Good work, everyone. Let's get back to patrol. Stay alert. The night is never truly quiet." Jake smirked. "You make it sound so easy, Admiral." Kate gave him a sharp look. "Because it has to be. Lives depend on it." Outside, the Mediterranean stretched endlessly, black and calm again under the moonless sky. The destroyer and its carrier group moved forward, vigilant, ready for the next challenge, but victorious in this battle. Somewhere deep below the surface, the enemy submarine lay silent, defeated. But above, the Lady Admiral's leadership had ensured the fleet's safety. Her sailors trusted her, the enemy feared her, and tonight, the ocean had learned a simple truth. Never underestimate the Lady Admiral. As dawn slowly approached, casting the first faint light over the sea, Kate leaned on the rail of the bridge once more. Her eyes scanned the horizon, calm, confident and unyielding. The midnight battle was over. The hunt was won. And Admiral Catherine Harrington, the Lady Admiral, had proven once again why her name was whispered across the fleet, not just for her rank, but for her courage, her skill, and her unbreakable resolve.